Perfect. Well, it looks like it's 2. So I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to Judy and Bev in a second, but I just welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have Beverly here from Leader Dog. And in case you haven't joined us before, you'll have a little chat button at the bottom of your screen that you can hit. And if you select in that little blue drop-down panel, all panelists and attendees, you'll be able to type to the entire group. So you can share questions, comments, anything you want, and we'll make sure to read them and have Bev answer them. Perfect. So Judy, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Bev, thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to continue our discussion with the Leader Dog organization and learn more about the next step in the process. So Bev has been with Leader Dog team for more than 20 years. She became a volunteer when she was just 11 years old when her family started as puppy raisers. And Bev has raised 13 puppies and hosted 3 breeding stock dogs for Leader Dog. She oversees all aspects of Leader Dog's canine development, including the breeding team, puppy development and care teams, prison puppies, and all associated volunteers. And Bev's main hobbies are centered around her dogs. She presents approximately 10 seminars a year on dog training in the areas of canine freestyle and clicker training. And she also competes with her personal dogs in a multitude of different dog sports, including nose work and dock diving. Bev has 2 German wire-haired pointers, including her dog that won Best in Breed at the 2015 Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. So yeah, that's how you know Laura, isn't it?
Yes.
All of you German wired-haired pointer people know each other. It's so funny.
Yeah.
So welcome. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining today, and thank you to Good Dog for having us as part of their series. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start us on the journey here, because we could talk puppy raising and Leader Dog all day long. So just a little bit about Leader Dog for those of you that this may be your first introduction to our organization. We are located in Rochester Hills, Michigan. We were founded in 1939 by a group of 3 Lions who, at the time, while we weren't the first guide dog organization, we were the first organization that did not charge our users for their dogs. And so we wanted to give a different look to the clients that were coming to our organization. As they mentioned in my bio, I have been at Leader Dog. Now I'm in my 26th year and also my 40th year as a volunteer. And my role at Leader Dog has always remained the same. I started in puppy development, and I've really maintained that process all the way through. I've not been far from the raising, breeding, and mentoring and coaching our puppy and breeding teams. And so that is my main function at Leader Dog. Just a little statistics about the blind and visually impaired population that we service. There are over 285 million people in the world that are visually impaired, and 1.3 million of those live in the United States. 75,000 people will become blind each year. In this country, 90% of our blind and visually impaired live low income, and 60% of them are unemployed. 43% of them live with depression, and only 10% travel independently. So while I'm going to talk about Leader Dogs for the Blind today, realize there are other organizations like ours throughout the United States that raise guide dogs. And so you may have heard of Seeing Eye or Guide Dogs for the Blind. We are all doing the same thing to service that 10% of the population that travel in our country independently. And we're always looking to improve that and to grow that because there's so many more people we could service with the use of our wonderful dogs.
Bev, sorry to interrupt. We can't see your screen. And I thought, we didn't know when you started sharing, but we can't see it.
Oh, I shared it. Let's see. Okay. Let me get back to share.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Oh, so now you get to see the end of my presentation.
Perfect.
Right. Let me get to showing you just my current slides. There we go. Okay, so this is a picture of our facility, just our Canine Development Center. And this is where we house and all of the dogs at our facility. The statistics that I just rattled off for you. And now we are back to the services that we provide. So with the services that we provide, we really focus on our highly trained, skilled guide dogs. We graduate approximately 175 annually to clients throughout worldwide. We don't just service the United States. We do service clients all over the world. We service a lot of our clients in Brazil, Mexico, and many other countries around the world. We also have our orientation and mobility skills. These are how people learn to travel with using a white cane. So if you went blind tomorrow, you would not be ready to get a guide dog. You would need to learn some mobility skills on your own. So we say getting a guide dog is almost like going to college. You've gone through your remedial education and now you're ready to move on to college. And that's the same with getting a guide. If you went blind tomorrow, you still need to learn some skills about how it is to live blind before you're able to get a dog. A dog will get you to point A to point B safely, but you already need to know how to get there. And that's where you learn that through your mobility skills. You would go one block and at that curb you might want to turn left and you're going to go 2 blocks and at that curb you turn right and so on. And so you learn those mobility skills. So we have clients who come to Leader Dog just for mobility skills. We average about 2 to 4 visually impaired clients every single week throughout the year that come and live at our campus for 1 week and upskill their skills in mobility. About 50% of those clients will then come back and get a working guide dog. So it does show that by learning more of the mobility, they're able to get more confidence to come and get a dog. We also provide a summer camp experience for youth. And so for blind and visually impaired children, this may be the first time that they're ever talking to someone else who's like them. And so it's an experience that we allow them a day to spend with a dog so that they might, when they get older, they might be able to apply and want to apply to get a dog as well. But we do other things with them. We take them canoeing and give them all kinds of experiences that kids their age would experience as well. And so that's a great program that we offer. We also have a high number of volunteerism, and this is really the backbone and the bread and butter of our program. The group that I oversee, we have about 450 to 500 families annually that raise puppies for our program. We also have about 100 families that house our breeding stock dogs that have the puppies for our program. None of our dogs live on campus throughout their breeding career. They do live in individual homes. And so that's another group of volunteers that we work with. And then the last group of volunteers that we have on campus is about 375 volunteers. Most of those spend time working with our dogs once they return for training. And so while they are at our campus for training, these volunteers come in and give them enrichment, spend time grooming. We've taught them canine massage, T-touch, all different kinds of ways that they can enrich and spend time with our dogs while they're in training. A little bit about where we receive our puppies and dogs. So we do have our own in-house breeding program. Our dogs that are part of our breeding colony, as I mentioned, live with our volunteers. When they come in season, they come to our facility where our breeding manager and our breeding specialists decide who they will be bred to. They do the breeding, and then the dog goes back home. If they are confirmed pregnant, They will deliver those puppies in their home, and they will raise them for the next 6.5 weeks. And so in upcoming programs that we're going to provide on Good Dog, we're going to talk about how we train our volunteers to do that, some of the tips and tricks that we give to our volunteers that may make some of you that are breeders have more opportunity and education as well, because we're training on average 45 new families every year that come into our program how to whelp puppies in their home. We have a very low stillbirth rate, and it's really it starts the puppies out on the right road for us. We also get a small amount of our puppies from outside breeders that go through the same health and temperament assessments that we require in our own program. And just a little shout out to Good Dog, since they have introduced us to all of you, we already have our first breeder who is donating a puppy to us based on the relationship that we've been able to build here by just expanding our knowledge base. And so that's been really exciting. And this is a wonderful way to allow diversity in our own genetics. So it's a win-win for outside breeders as well. So I want to talk about our puppies and their first transition. So once a litter of puppies are born in our host family, our puppies are going to go through multiple transitions in their life. And this may be true for the puppies in your home. If you're a breeder, you may be sending your puppy off to other families. They may become show dogs. They may become someone's personal pet, or they may become a service or a guide for a person who needs them. The dogs that we use in our program, we use Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, and German Shepherds. And we also cross those breeds as we need to, because of the market of people that we're servicing. So we are serving people who are blind and visually impaired, and some of those people are also not only blind and visually impaired, but they also may be deaf. And any ranges of those legal capacities of being legally blind and legally deaf. And so we're looking at the best dog that we can provide to them. And our breed hosts, our volunteers, will keep those puppies until they're 6.5 weeks of age. During that time, our breeding families, again, we're going to go into more detail in a future session, but just real briefly, these hosts are given guidelines of things that we ask them to follow: the early neurological stimulation, multiple amounts of opportunities for socialization, teaching them really basic skills. One of the most exciting things that we do, if you've ever seen a litter of puppies, most of the time when you get near the pen of puppies, you'll see the puppies, you know, leaning up against the side of the wall or the pen where they're being held. And our puppies don't do that. Our puppies start to learn at a very young age, when someone approaches them, that their way to get attention and to get future attention for themselves is to sit, because that is something we're going to want them to do later on in life. So when we start feeding them real food, when we start giving them really good attention when they're about 4 weeks of age, and we're starting the process of letting people come to the home to visit the puppies, we start asking our people not to pick them up or give them attention until the puppy is sitting. And they quickly learn that that behavior is what gets the attention for them. A lot of people don't think that puppies that young are learning anything, and believe me, they're sponges from the time that they're born. And so to see this happen time and time again with our litters, we have approximately 100 litters at Leader Dog every year. And litter after litter that comes back from our host families, we can approach them, and that's what they do. No matter who approaches their space, they will do that. So the puppies at 6.5 weeks will return to Leader Dog. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, that's a little young. Again, we have to look at what our end goal is, what we're looking to do, and what we've set our puppies up to do. And so our puppies will come back to Leader Dog as a litter. And from there, we have volunteers and team members that are set up to care for them. We have a $12 million facility that's been built to take care of these dogs, to give them optimal space, time, airflow, all of the things that we want to do to make sure that they are well cared for and healthy. At that time, we also give them their first medical exam, and their vaccines are given just before they leave to go home with their puppy raising families. We do place our puppies between the ages of 7 and 8 weeks of age, and they will go to their individual puppy raising family. Again, some of you may say, well, I don't place my puppies that early. All of the things that we do, I'll go back to why we do it. So we do this because our puppy raisers will start taking their puppies out to be socialized right from the time that they get these dogs. And so a puppy may be going out at 8 or 9 weeks of age to a restaurant, to a store, and they're going out in public. We want to make sure that these puppies have a little bit of time to build that bond with their new puppy raising family before the first fear period hits. And that first fear period really is going to hit somewhere between 9 and 12 weeks of age. And so we either have to place the puppies before that time or after that time. And in our history, we have been placing puppies at this age and having very good success. So our breed hosts time all of their interactions and raisings with these puppies to get them ready to return at the 6.5 weeks of age. And then we time all of our placements to have them in their homes by the time they reach 8 weeks of age. Now we move our puppies on to their second transition. Their second transition is, as I mentioned, they're going to start to go home with their puppy raiser family. So we have about 450 to 500 puppy raisers that raise our dogs each year, and they raise them in various states. So you don't have to just live in Michigan to raise a puppy. So we have puppies that go in about 20 different states and in Canada. They are raised anywhere from a person that might still be in school and has permission from their family. That's how I started raising puppies. It was a way I could convince my family to let me have more dogs. I was in 4-H at the time, and we also showed dogs as a family. But this was a really good opportunity where you spend a year raising a dog. And if you do this dog after dog after dog, you learn a lot about raising puppies, and you learn to really hone in on your own skills about what it's like to raise a puppy from 7 weeks until about 12 to 15 months of age. We also have not only just puppy raisers and families with children. You may be a single individual. We get a lot of people who are empty nesters. Their kids are now off to college, and they find that they have free time and a lot of nurturing that they want to give back. And so that's a time that they start to pick up puppy raising, and that takes them up into their senior years. And this is a really great way that seniors can stay really physically fit by getting out and raising puppies for a year. You're not taking on a long-term commitment of a dog for their life cycle, but it's an opportunity that you can still have a dog in your life until you really realize that physically you shouldn't have dogs in your life. So we have this full gamut of the ways and the reasons people come to Leader Dog to raise puppies for us. We also have puppies in minimum security prisons. We are in several minimum security prisons in Michigan. We have one facility in Iowa and one in Minnesota. And these inmate raisers take on these puppies and raise them just like our families would. They just live in a little bit different setting, and but they do the same type of work that we ask. In some ways, because they have a different timeline to their day, they can spend more time or a different amount of time with these puppies. Our trainers say they can tell when the dogs return from training. If a dog's been raised in a minimum security prison, they know that they're going to need to do a little bit more socializing with that dog in training. But if the dog has been raised by a family, they know that they need to do a little bit more obedience with that dog when it's returned for training, just because of the experiences that either of those raising opportunities provide our puppies. The puppy raisers do get to name their puppy. And that's a gift that a lot of our puppy raisers feel like they get to give to the puppy that goes on with them for the rest of their life. So I'm sure some of you are already thinking, you're asking these families to give up their puppy. Yes, we do. They come into puppy raising knowing that they're going to give this puppy up in the end of the year. And so by naming this puppy, it's a gift. It's something that we share with them. Some of our puppy raisers go through extensive processes and how they try to figure out how to name their puppies, just like we do in the show dog world. Those people, those of you that are listening that have show dogs, we go through the same type of thing when we're trying to figure out our next puppy's name. We give them a lot of resources, which I'm going to go into further detail shortly, but we give them a puppy raiser manual, and we have different support systems called puppy counselors and puppy coordinators. And I'll go into that in depth here shortly. Now our puppies make their third transition. This is undoubtedly the most difficult time for a puppy raiser, where they do return the puppy to leader dog. So even though you know this is going to happen when the puppy first comes to you as that cute, cuddly 10-pound puppy that you're spending all of your time housebreaking, you're teaching all of these amazing skills to, when that puppy hits about 10 to 11 months of age, our puppy raisers almost become bored with the puppies because they've taught them so well. The puppies are now bored. And they're ready to begin their formal training. And so those dogs are returned to us between 12 and 15 months of age. It's a process that we go to determine what age these dogs are returned at for our facility. But we try and make sure that we're providing our instructors a variety of breeds, a variety of sexes and colors that come in for training each and every month. We have about 45 dogs that return for training each and every month for our instructors to begin training. And our instructors don't know yet what client they're training them for 5 months down the road. So the more variety we can provide to them, the better it goes. When our dogs return for training, the very first thing that's going to happen to them as they're learning to acclimate to their new lifestyle is that they're going to receive a full physical by our 2 full-time veterinarians that work at Leader Dog. They're also going to get a full set of x-rays. We x-ray their elbows, their hips, and their hearts. And then they will also be spayed or neutered if they are not being considered to be pulled for our breeding program. So the dogs we pull for our breeding program go through a little bit more training and a little bit more health and physical opportunities with our veterinarians. They will go to a canine cardiologist and have a full heart scan done. Our veterinarians will do a more intensive physical. And then if it's a male, we'll look at semen analysis and make sure that we are pulling a male who is going to be able to get females pregnant. And if it's a female we're pulling for our breeding program, we're going to do a vaginal exam and make sure that there's no strictures or things that may preclude her from being part of that. So any of the dogs that will go into training are all spayed or neutered. And then our training lasts approximately 5 months. So there's the different phases of training that our dogs will go through. There's milestones that they need to hit throughout the training process. And that's something that Meredith covered in a previous session. So I'm sure you can go back and find that if you missed that. But it's one of the things that as a dog lover myself, I've had to really over the years decide is, am I still doing the right thing? Do we still want dogs to work for a living? And people ask us that question all the time. And is it fair to ask dogs to work for a living? So one of the things that hopefully you're getting from this is from the time these puppies are conceived, everything that we do in their life is leading them to this job. And when they're not doing this job, many of these dogs are very sad. They are unhappy because they want to do something. They want to work. We've selected the breeds we've selected for a few reasons, but one of them is because they do want to work and they want a job. Over the years that I've been at Leader Dog and I've done some soul searching, I found out one of the reasons why I love what I do is because our dogs get to be part of the decision making about whether being a guide is for them. So we talk about the training that a dog goes through. We can teach them all the skills we want. They can be as proficient as we want with someone who can see. But when we give that dog to someone who cannot see, the dog then has to make a choice to continue to do their job. And if they choose not to, if they choose that this is not a job that they want to do, they simply don't do it. They may not stop at a curb as you're seeing this dog here. They may not choose to take their person around a pole that's in the middle of a sidewalk. They may just simply stop working and not be as proficient as they were with someone who can see. And so sometimes dogs get career changed or released from our program simply because they can't take on the pressures of the job. And so as someone who's a dog lover, and we always think about how many dogs we're producing and not overproducing and what we need to do, the fact that our dogs get to be part of that decision in their life is an important one for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens in our fourth transition. So that's where our dogs decide that they want to become a guide or they don't. So our fourth transition is, this is a picture of one of our clients working with his dog. This is a little bit of an older dog. Jeff and his dog Gracie are very seasoned. They have traveled all over the country presenting about Leader Dog. And his story is extremely powerful about how he really lost himself as he lost his vision as he got older and how his dog gave him back his life. And so when our clients come onto our campus, they will be on our campus approximately 26 days. The first couple of days, they do not have a dog. They are learning the skills that their dog knows, how to hold a leash, how to hold a harness, where to put your leash when you sit down for a meal and your dog is beside you. Things that we just take for granted because either we've taught someone to do it or we've seen someone do it. They don't have that luxury. So we have to teach that to them. Some of the clients who come to Leader Dog have never even owned a dog. So they have to learn dog husbandry skills as well. So the first couple of days, they're learning some of those pieces, and then they will be assigned their dog where they will continue to go through training until the end of that month where they get to go home. And if they do go home into their home environment, we do have field representatives that go and travel throughout the regions of the United States that do follow up on these dogs and can go out and help and support as we need to. If somewhere along the training process, the dog determines it's not a suitable guide, either the dog doesn't enjoy the work, it can't handle all the transitions that's happened in its life, or maybe there's a work-related reason, it's too distracted by squirrels or small animals, or overly friendly to people, or any of the various reasons that may happen out there. Our dogs are career changed, that's their term. We don't call them rejects. We just simply say that they have a change of career. So that dog is either evaluated for an alternative career. So some of our dogs, while they may not be able to be guides, they may have more of a temperament suited to be a therapy dog or a dog that can go on and work for detection work or something else. And so we have partnered with some other organizations that when we find a dog suitable for their work, we can place them in an alternative career. Sometimes the best job for a dog is to just be a pet, and that's okay. And so if that's the case, we can place it with its puppy raising family, and they either keep that dog or it goes to a family friend, or we have a laundry list of people who are ready to adopt the dogs that don't make it in our program. As you can well imagine, a dog that might be a little too excited around squirrels is still going to make a wonderful pet. They've been well socialized and well trained. So I want to go back to that second transition with our puppy raisers and just really kind of talk a little bit about what it takes for our dogs and what we ask our puppy raisers and of our dogs while they're being raised. People think that there's some really special magic that goes to raising our dogs, and there's some real basic things that we work on. you can't deny that basic obedience is so very important to dogs of any type. So the goals on the behaviors that we want to teach is our dogs to learn to do loose leash walking. We do train with positive reinforcement. Our puppy raisers do use verbal markers of a yes or good as they reinforce their dog with training treats. So that's the way that we're going to teach loose leash walking, and that starts from the time they're very, very baby puppies all the way through. I'd say probably this is what the first two are what we spend the majority of our dog's life working on: loose leash walking and impulse control. So impulse control for a guide, for just being a good pet, is very important. I see something and I want it, makes for a very challenging dog to live with. So if you can teach your dog to control their urges and their impulses when they see something, then it makes them a much better dog for training of any type, and especially for guide dog work. You can well imagine if you are blind or visually impaired and you are traveling down the street and your dog sees another dog or a person or a squirrel and they like to chase those things, then that doesn't make it a useful guide to someone who can't see. And teaching them the term leave it, like we like to use in the dog industry, also does not help a person who's blind or visually impaired. They can't give the dog that cue because they can't see that it's even present. And so again, that goes back to the dog needing to make those choices. We need to teach them the skills to control their urges, and the dog needs to choose whether they can or they can't. As I've mentioned, we use Labrador retrievers and golden retrievers. They like to retrieve. And so it's about what we breed for. So we don't breed for a dog who has a high retrieve drive because we know we're never going to use that in our work. We don't want our dogs to get highly distracted by balls rolling or being thrown by them. That's, again, an impulse control issue or concern that we need to work with. So some of it comes in breeding, that we're not breeding for dogs that have that as a forefront in their behavior mechanism. And it also comes in the way that we raise them. We don't practice that a lot with our dogs because it's not something that's going to be in their life long term. So when you're thinking about whether you're raising a pet dog, a show dog, a performance dog, or a guide dog, you want to think about what the end results are that you're trying to produce and create. And that really helps to determine how you want to raise that dog. We teach all the basic obedience commands that any obedience instructor would be teaching. Heel, sit, down, stay, come, walk on a leash. So those are all very basic obedience cues that we ask our dogs. But the next couple here are going to be really important for our guide dogs. We used to say to our puppy raisers that we wanted them to socialize their puppy in all environments so that no matter where they take their puppies, they are social. And if you think about us as social people, I think one of the things that we're all struggling with during this pandemic is, as social beings, we're struggling not being able to be social to each other. And that's a connotation that our puppy raisers, whether they realize they're doing it or not, when we say social, we want our dogs to have been socialized in environments, not social to each other or social to people. As a working guide, they won't be pet by people in the community, but our dogs need to be friendly. So there are times when our puppy raisers need to let people pet their puppies, but under good impulse control. And so we changed how we ask our puppy raisers to do things, and we ask them to familiarize their puppies in all settings, not socialize. And just by changing the term, it gives you a different picture of familiarizing your puppy in all settings. And so again, no matter what you're raising your puppy for, having them familiarized to the different environments they're going to need in their lifetime is very important. And I would also stress that the majority of the familiarization should take place prior to 4 months of age. There is a window of time that happens with your puppies that if they miss a lot of the familiarization in variety of settings, that it makes it really much more challenging for them as they age to feel as comfortable or as confident in different settings. So we really focus on the first 4 months of a puppy's life and then giving them really good skills at that time and then refining them through the rest of their puppy raising. We ask that our puppy raisers help teach our puppies to make very good decisions and choices. So we use management a lot in our puppy raising so that puppies don't learn to get into trash cans or up onto countertops, because we're helping them learn to make really good decisions. And then the last thing is the home behaviors. Again, you can imagine if you are blind or visually impaired, no matter how great your dog may guide you in public, if they have poor home manners, that makes for a very difficult dog to live with. And so home manners are something that are very important as well. Ultimately, if you think about the dogs that are able to pass a canine good citizen test, that would be very similar to what we're looking for with our dogs in their raising process. So we have a few ways that we get there. We have our tracking and resources. This is a picture of a dog that's being raised in a school. And so some of our puppy raisers, again, this is an experience that she's able to give her puppy because she is still in high school. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic and the social guidelines, we don't have puppies in schools right now because it makes people be too social. They want to be around the dog and they want to be petting the dog, and then that takes away from the social distancing. And that may be something that you encounter with your own pet dogs if you're taking them out into places like a Home Depot, Ace Hardware, some place that allows you to take your pet dogs for the socialization or familiarization that is so important to our dogs. We do supply our puppy raisers with a very extensive puppy raising manual. We ask them to raise their dogs to what we call our In for Training standards, our IFT standards. And again, these are very similar to a canine good citizen test. And so it gives them a focus of how they're raising their puppies. We also supply them quarterly newsletters that help our puppy raisers raise in a very close sense of community. We have a Facebook page that is devoted just for them. And so having communication and keeping everyone in communication is very important. We also do 2 to 3 virtual trainings every week with any puppy raiser who would like to join us. And then here's where we have our people come into play. We have an extremely dedicated group of people called puppy counselors. And these are puppy raisers. They've been longtime puppy raisers, very skilled at what they do, that decide to take on small groups of people raising puppies that they can be their initial support. So if you were living, let's say, in Chicago, Illinois, we would give you the puppy counselor that lives closest to your environment, and you would meet with them on a monthly basis, whether virtually or in person, and they would be able to give you updates on how your puppy's doing, give you some tips and tricks. And so you have this sense of community that you build with people in your area throughout the time that you're raising. We also have 4 puppy coordinators that work full-time at Leader Dog, and they are assigned between 100 and 125 puppy raisers that they work with throughout the year. So from the time that you get assigned your puppy until that time that that dog either graduates or gets career change from our program, you can call that puppy coordinator at any time and get some support or help and direction as well. And then we also send out, when our puppies are first going out to their puppy raisers, we have weekly timelines, and these work very much like a funnel. So the very first week you take your puppy home, this timeline says, here are the things you should be working on. Here is why you should be working on it. And here's where you can find resources about how to work on that. And so it's the biggest part of the funnel. When you get that puppy home, you have the most amount of things to work on. And as the weeks go by and you get more and more timelines, that funnel gets smaller and smaller. So the tasks that you're asked to work on get smaller and smaller. And it helps keep our puppy raisers on track. And it helps to ensure that the first 4 months of our puppy's life is the most important and critical, and the most learning happens for them. Because these dogs are going to return for training, our puppy raisers are also asked to fill out questionnaires every 3 months. And those questionnaires are then visible to our instructors when they return for training. And it helps with the whole process of training, getting to know the dogs, feeling like they know what happened to them in the first year of their life. And also when they get ready to place that dog with a client, some of the experiences that happened with that dog, what might make it the best suitable match for a client. So these questionnaires are vital to us as well. And when they come in at 3 months of age and we look at them, we're able to determine whether we need to give that puppy raiser a call and give them some added support, or if everything looks to be running right according to our process. And so for us, it's really about raising the most well-rounded, comfortable dog in all settings possible that has good manners and obedience. And at the end of the day, that's really what we look for. The technical skills of training a guide will happen when they come back to Leader Dog. So what a puppy raiser needs to do is just teach that dog to be that well-mannered social dog that we need to begin the training process. So in short, that's a little bit about how we get to the dogs that we use in our program and what we use. I just thought I would end with the cutest picture of pictures with our 3 little Labradors here. This is also a little snippet into some of the enrichment that we do with our dogs, and some of the paraphernalia that we do put on our dogs when they're out in public. They wear their bandanas that let the public know that they are being raised for a specific purpose. And they also then have puppy jackets that they wear when they get a little older. And that helps set them up for wearing their harness as they get older too. So every little bit that we do helps to get us to that end goal. And again, if there's anything I can say to those of you who are breeders out there that are raising puppies or giving them to people for show or performance purposes, is really think about what that end goal is. You should be thinking about that before the puppy comes into your home, so that you have a plan of how you want to raise that puppy to get you to the best possible outcome so that everyone's happy, most of all, including the dog. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them at this time. I know that our friends here at Good Dog hopefully have been monitoring the chat and can let me know if there's anything I need to answer.
Thanks, Bev. That was great. We do have a couple questions. Diane wants to know if you can explain a little more of what T-Touch is with respect to the volunteers and the dogs in for training.
Sure. So we have T-Touch is what's called Tellington Touch. The shortened version is T-Touch. We also teach them canine massage. So when you think about canine massage, I'm also certified to do canine massage. It's much more about working on the muscles of the dog. In T-Touch, it's much more about working on the energy of the animal. And so what we have found with our volunteers is it helps them to calm down while they're also working with dogs who may be showing some signs of stress, may be a little anxious, may be a little busy. So by using some T-Touch techniques, we actually use 4 of them, 4 basic techniques that we've learned through T-Touch, through Tellington Touch, if you want to look that up. We do these with our dogs from the time that they're puppies. We teach them to puppy raisers. We teach them to our volunteers. Most importantly, we teach them to our clients. So the day after they receive their dogs, they learn T-Touch as well. And if you remember, I said some of our clients may not have ever owned a dog, and they may not be able to see at all. So they might be legally blind, which means they don't have enough correctable vision to drive a vehicle. All the way through, they are legally blind and they have no vision. So if you have never been able to see someone pet a dog, you can imagine how awkward you might be in touching a dog When someone says pet a dog and you've never seen anyone pet a dog, you don't know what that means. So we're able to teach them these 4 different techniques with their dog, and so they can give them meaningful touch. So we're able to teach them how to touch their dog. One is very simple, and it's called Noah's March. And you take the flat palm of your hand, and on one side of your dog's body, starting at the neck of the dog, you're simply going to slowly run your hand, stroking all the way down to the dog's tail. Very slowly, very calmly, going with the grain of hair and just marching down the side of the dog's body. And you can do that anywhere on the dog. We also do what's called an ear slide, starting with your thumb on the inside flap of the ear, with your finger on the outside flap of the ear, running very slowly down the flap, providing just a little bit of a squeeze at the tip of the ear, which provides a little relaxation to come out into the dog chemically. It helps them to relax. So if you've ever been nervous and you grab your earlobes, you do that because there are chemicals that are released into your system that help you to relax. The same is true for dogs. So those of you who are training for performance sports, there's a technique that you could use if you need to calm your dog down when you're waiting online to run an agility course or to go do your nose work run. And you need your dog to kind of just relax and you kind of become one. So they're very simple techniques. They're techniques that anyone can do. And we've just narrowed down 4 of them that we teach. But learning T-Touch is a very valuable tool, and it's very simple and very easy for people to learn the basics of. Great question.
Somebody had a question. When taking puppies out in public at a young age, they're not fully vaccinated. So what precautions do you take to limit the risk of different viruses such as parvo?
Sure. Another great question. So we ask that our puppy raisers not take their puppies anywhere that normal pet population can go until they are fully vaccinated. So that would be places like pet stores. We automatically already don't say we don't allow our dogs at dog parks because of the concerns that might happen there. But being mindful about taking your dog places where other dogs don't frequent. So our puppies, by law, are not allowed in restaurants or businesses. We have to get permission to take them into those places. But by going into a restaurant, you're not liable to see another dog. And it's a place, young puppies do a lot of sleeping. Well, unless they're German wire-haired pointers, I will say. German wire-haired pointers don't sleep a lot. So, but normal puppies, Labradors, Goldens, the main breeds that we use, they sleep a lot when they're puppies. And so if you can take them into places and when you're sitting having your meal, they normally sleep anyway because they are sleepy puppies. It teaches them very quickly. It imprints them on what they should be doing naturally. So that's one of the reasons why the benefit for us to do this when they're young far outweighs the concern we have about them not having all of their vaccinations. We take all the precautions we can, and knock on wood when I say this, we have had extremely very, very low concerns of any dogs while out in public because we take the opportunity to take them into places that are safe.
I think that's pretty good advice for all of us socializing our dogs.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
So we had a question. Who are ideal volunteers to help raise a future leader dog? Are there certain requirements like a fenced in yard?
Sure. We get that question a lot, and there really is no one perfect person that is out there to raise a puppy. No one circumstance is perfect because all of our clients that they go to are going to be different. So if you don't have a fenced in yard, it means you need to keep your puppy on leash at all times. If you have multiple people in your home, great. You need to make sure that that puppy spends time alone, not always with groups of people. So whatever your circumstance is, you want to try and also expose them to the opposite. So if you are a single person that's raising a puppy, you want to make sure that you and your puppy don't become so close during that year that they can't make those other transitions that I mentioned. And so they might have multiple sleepovers with someone else. They might go to family functions where there are crowds of people that gather. So you just want to think about those things. Uh, People always ask us too about dog experience. Well, I've never had a dog, so I guess I can't raise a puppy. It's actually just the opposite. If you've raised dogs before, you come to Leader Dog with your own set of experiences, which may or may not be the ones that we ask you to do. If you've never had a dog before, we're going to give you all of those tips and tricks. So we actually have a lot of families. We just recently had a family return to us. There were these two individuals. They were both single and they were both raising puppies, man and woman, and they fell in love through puppy raising. And they after they got married, they kind of stopped puppy raising for a while, and they just returned. They now have 3 kids, and they felt like their children were now old enough to be part of the puppy raising process.
That's
And this
wonderful.
was, isn't that great? And so this was a wonderful way to introduce them to puppy raising. So they have very specific skills that they follow, and they get to learn through reading a manual that has very specific steps on how to raise puppies. And so the kids got to learn through that. They just returned their first puppy and already have their second puppy as a family. And it's been really great. I will say, as a person who raised puppies when I was a kid, it was much easier to return the puppies when I was younger. It's much harder as I got older to return dogs, because kids live so much in the moment. So it's a great way to explain to them about giving back, about why we do this, and it teaches them a lot about being philanthropic later on in their life, about giving back to society.
Yeah. I think Monica and I were chatting about this. I think I'd be a failed foster. It's really hard for me to give back. Is there somebody had following up on that? Is there an orientation or something that people that might be interested in puppy raising could get more information?
Sure, we do have orientations, and so we have a lot available on our website. So you can go to www.leaderdog.org, and on there is a little drop-down tab about volunteering and raising a puppy or hosting a breeding dog. And we have orientations usually every month or every other month where you can learn more about our program. And then we have a hidden page on our website that has a lot of the resources that we utilize and give to our raisers, along with our Facebook page. And so once you apply to raise a puppy, someone will contact you by phone and talk you through the process, make sure this is still for you, answer whatever questions you might have. And once that happens, then you will get a follow-up letter that gives you links to our resources so that you can start learning before you are getting a puppy.
That's great. And then one last question, because we did have a question about like what makes a good leader dog, or what makes a good dog for seeing eye dog. And then also somebody asked about have you ever tried a different breed than the 3 you mentioned? So have you ever tried giant breeds? So if you could just touch on why those breeds.
Sure. So we have tried multiple different breeds throughout the years. Actually, when Leader Dog was first founded, if you look at our first class of clients, they were Doberman Pinschers and Collies. And then they had some Boxers. For the longest time, the majority of our dogs weren't purebreds at all. They were dogs we found at shelters. So when we first were founded in 1939, it was easy to go to a shelter and to find wonderful dogs. But now there's been such a movement in our country for shelters that many wonderful adoptable dogs don't find their way to shelters. And so we had to develop a very extensive breeding program so that we know exactly what we're creating. It isn't because we don't want to save the dogs out there. We've done lots of them. Actually, when I first started at Leader Dog, my second day of work was my first time in an animal shelter. And I had to look at these dogs and decide which ones I would consider and which ones I wouldn't. And I thought right then and there, this might be the shortest career ever, because I didn't think I could do it. to look at these dogs and to say, I'm not picking you and I don't know what's going to happen to you was really difficult. So about 15 years ago, we made a very conscious effort to decide not to take in outside donations by soliciting at shelters. We still take in outside sources as adults. We just don't go out and try and find them because we want to know how many dogs we're providing to our instructors every month. We want to know from a safety perspective how they've been raised and what their temperament is like. So we want to make sure that there's no bites in their history. There's no resource food guarding, none of those things that might have wound those dogs up at a shelter. And so with that also comes the breed of dogs that we use. So the dogs we use need to be dogs that come at least to knee height of a person, because dogs that are less than your knee height are tripping hazards. So when you're blind, if you think about that, if you run into a larger sized dog, you don't typically fall over them. But if you run into a dog that's smaller, it's easier to fall. So we utilize dogs that are about knee height. We also want to utilize dogs that are smaller in health issues and temperament issues. Most of the guide dog organizations, as well as service, PTSD, therapy, you want to name it, they're going to almost all say we do Labrador retrievers and golden retrievers. And that is for a reason. They really are suited for this work. They're very happy to do this work. And so that's one of the reasons why we do that. We also have to look at our client base. So one of the reasons why we still have a small amount of German Shepherds in our client pool is because, in our dog pool, is because we still have clients who request them. And some of them request them because they live in inner cities that are close to public transportation. And that's the only place they can live because that's the only place public transportation is. And so they want a dog that isn't scary, but looks scary. And a golden retriever doesn't always fit that bill. And so sometimes it's just for the look of the dog, or it might just be that that's what they love. And so we breed and raise dogs based also on our client need. We have looked at other dogs. We have had smooth-coated collies. We have done Chesapeake Bay retrievers, flat-coated retrievers. Somebody had mentioned, I think, Judy, in your question about the giant breeds. One of the reasons why we don't really go with the giant breeds is their life expectancy tends to be shorter than some of the mid-sized breeds. And when you're talking about a client that doesn't get their dog until they're almost 2 years of age, it takes about a year before we really consider them a seasoned team. If that dog only works until they're 7 or 8 years of age, that's a really short span of time in someone's life. But if a dog can work until they're 10, 11, 12, then that gives them much more time together. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't go with the larger breeds. They also, speed, the speed in which they walk is something that we consider. All of the different things. We also look at coat care. So we want our dogs to have a double coat. It's one of the reasons why we don't use Dobermans anymore, or boxers. So we want our dogs to be able to grow a double coat no matter where in the world they may go. So if they go to Guatemala, where it's typically very warm, or they go to Saskatchewan, where it's typically very cold, they are going to be able to grow the type of coat they need for the environment that they live. So there's a lot of different reasons why we've selected the breeds we do. At the end of the day, the primary function, or the primary numbers of our program is about 75 to 80% of our dogs are Labradors. And then the remaining break down into Goldens, and then a very few German Shepherds. And that's just because Labradors, they just kind of have it all. They, no matter what environment you put them in, they are going to be happy. They can eat, no matter how stressed they are. They eat, so they're able to maintain their body weight, and they just love the job. So
it's really interesting because there were things that I always would think about, like temperament, but there were other aspects I would never have considered coat quality. Like that's an interesting factor that you have to think about. Well, that's about all of our time. So the other questions that we have, there's a few other ones. We might send them along to you
Sure.
to answer. And thank you everyone for attending. And thank you so much, Bev. We've got lots of comments saying how great this was. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you,
guys.
Bev.
Thanks so much for attending. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, and congratulations again, Bev.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yep,
Bye,
alrighty.
everyone.
Bye.